Welcome back, guys. There's no welcome back. Welcome, guys, to the first episode of the One Take podcast.
No, they have been here a long time
I'm
already. They just
Timothy.
didn't know it yet.
I'm Timothy, your host for today, and I'm joined by Sean.
Hey.
Can you introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Sean, and I'm a graduate from Coventry University. I studied cybersecurity. I am going into IT. Wow, they all rhyme. I'm going to work for a company called RWE, and in September. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting talk.
And today our guest is Melissa. Melissa, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa, and I am a fourth year biomedical science student from the Uni of Sheffield. It's very weird because it's the first time I'm saying fourth year instead of third year because it's a new academic year. But anyway, I am from Selangor, and I'm very excited to be here.
Yeah, I think like the guys were introducing themselves, and for me, I am in my penultimate year in IMU, and all of us are actually from Malaysia. I'm currently the only one in Malaysia right now, as Sean and Mel are actually in the UK. So Sean, Mel, do you want to like tell like what you guys are actually doing right now?
Right now.
Right now. Okay. Sean, you want to go first?
Currently, I'm actually working on a few projects, doing web development. I'm just waiting for my job to start in September. So for now, I'm actually just focusing on that. And yeah, it's been great. And I think when I heard Tim talking about this podcast, I was actually pretty excited because I didn't really think about, Malaysia as much as I should. And yeah, I think it's an interesting discussion that we need to talk about.
Yes. And for myself, I currently just moved to London because I'm currently doing my placement year. So I finished my third year of biomed in Sheffield, and then I'm doing my placement year in London until next August, and then I'll be moving back to Sheffield for my master's. And yeah, currently it's I think been almost exactly a month that I've been in London, and I guess it coincides with our topic today as well because it's my first time like properly working in the UK. And yeah, I'm just very excited for this discussion today. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like Sean and I are talking about like our discussion today, and the topic for today will actually be talking about how much does Malaysia actually mean to us? Whether we are local or whether we are international. Because I think most of the time whenever we talk about Malaysia, it's more of like when we are locally in Malaysia, only do we talk about Malaysia, right? And I think I wanted to hear like how does it feel like for both of you? Because for Sean and Mel, both of you have been there like for 3 years. Like, how does it feel to be an international student?
I think it's great. I think I'm very fortunate to be able to be an international student here. And you're right. I feel like a lot of times when Malaysian students go overseas, and it doesn't only mean UK. Like even people that go to like America or like Australia, suddenly like the Malaysian heritage, poof, gone. Like, no. Let me rephrase that. We still care about the Malaysian heritage. We will put up like a Malaysian flag on our wall. But then any
Yes.
news that happened in Malaysia, right? Any news that happened in Malaysia, we don't really talk about it, or like the situation in Malaysia, the current COVID cases, or the political stuff that's happening in Malaysia. Kind of like push it aside. We don't really want to talk about it. It's a bit much, right? And I feel like. Yeah, I think that's one of the things international students do. I think I can say that for myself. and yeah, it's not that great to be honest. There's a lot to say about the current state of Malaysia, the future of Malaysia, especially how there will be less knowledge in general in Malaysia as more students move overseas. And yeah, I think personally I would say we as international students have a big part to play, but I haven't been thinking about that part for a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think personally for me, maybe this is like a slightly different approach from what Sean said. But like, I think for me, weirdly enough, I identify more as a Malaysian once I actually went overseas. So moving to the UK my first year was my first time living away from my parents and being outside of Malaysia for long periods of time. And for me, like interestingly enough, once I'm in a foreign place and in a foreign country, I actually identify more as a Malaysian because for me, like for someone who grew up in Malaysia this whole time, for me, like like it's like yeah, I'm Malaysian, but like so what, because like I'm always in Malaysia, I'm surrounded by Malaysians. The language is like Malaysian English or whatever, so it's like no difference to me. It's just like it's just Malaysia, you don't really see it because you're surrounded by it. But then for me, like when I came into the UK, then only I realized that like it's significant. Being Malaysian is actually significant. It's different from everyone around you. The identity that you carry is Malaysian, whereas when you are in Malaysia all of the while, you don't really carry this identity as a Malaysian because you're just surrounded by it the whole time. So yeah, I guess being in the UK, I felt more Malaysian compared to like the rest of my life being in Malaysia. And you can see, like when you go to a restaurant in London, for example, you hear the table next to you speaking in like Malaysian slang, and you know that they are Malaysian. You know that there's the identity, our slang. So yeah, I guess now that we are approaching the end of our undergraduate life, we are presented with this decision whether or not we want to try to live in the UK for a long period of time, or do we want to go back to Malaysia. I think some of my friends, in their mind, it's like, yeah, my family is in Malaysia. Of course, I'll go back to Malaysia after my undergrad. I'm just in the UK to study. Whereas, more like maybe a majority of the people would say, if I'm presented with the opportunity to work in the UK, of course I'll take it because it's a better opportunity, better money, maybe, better networking, which I guess is what we'll be talking about today. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess like
Because like I have some friends that have auntie and uncles here in Birmingham, and they will cook spicy food and all that, and I'll be like, I can take that spice, I will be able to do this and that, improve my Malaysianness. But I wouldn't have to do that when in Malaysia, right? And that thing about our decision, our choice to stay in Malaysia, go back to Malaysia or stay in the UK. I think I have a different answer to different people. If I'm talking to locals in the UK, I will tell them, no, I'm going to stay here in the UK. I'm going to, work here and we'll be friends for a long time. But if I'm talking to someone from Malaysia, like, of course I'll go back to Malaysia. Malaysia's our home, our country, and all that. So it's like it's a kind of two-sided, two-faced kind of thing. But yeah, I guess we're going to talk about that, right?
Definitely. So like a lot of you were talking about like how you felt like very how much you really miss home sometimes, or how like try to prove that you're Malaysian, right? And I think like something that we always ask is like, what do you miss most about home? And I think before I even reach that, like for you guys, do you think like home is like in Malaysia or in the UK?
That's a tough question.
That's a tough question. Yeah, Mel,
Yeah.
I think you.
I think I guess in terms of, okay, what do you miss most about Malaysia? I think what a lot of people will say will be the food, because like the food in UK is like very, very different. And it doesn't satisfy most of our Malaysian taste buds. But I guess going back to my first year, right, when I went to the UK for like a year and then I came back to Malaysia during summer break, I think the moment like I entered the airport and the moment I reached home after being in the UK for a year, right, it was like the best feeling ever, because like it's like, whoa, I managed to stay away from my country and my home for like almost a year, for like 9 months, right, and it was such an achievement. So it always feels good. I think the moment I walked into the airport, like I could feel like the Malaysian heat, and like everyone around me was speaking like Malaysian English or like Malay, like people speaking Malay, like even the people like collecting rubbish were like speaking Malay. I was like, whoa, it's such a nice feeling, like going back home. So I guess like home will always Malaysia will always be home. But at the same time, I think now I'm kind of like at a different stage because I'm no longer in Sheffield. But when I was in Sheffield for like after like maybe in my second year, my third year, I really considered Sheffield my home as well, because it was more because like of the friends that I had there. And I was very, very comfortable in Sheffield. And when I had to move from Sheffield to London, I realized that Sheffield was really my home as well, apart from Malaysia, because I was just really comfortable there. But I guess the main reason why Sheffield was home is because I'm familiar with the city and I'm familiar with the people there. But the problem is, I think most of the people who are in Sheffield are there temporarily because they are students. So if let's say I like 10 years down the road, if I go back to Sheffield, right, I don't think, I mean, of course the surrounding is gonna feel familiar, but the people there will be completely different. And I feel like the reason why Sheffield felt like home is because of my friends. So it wouldn't be home for like in another like 1 year. So but Malaysia, it will always be home because the people will, like my family will always be there. My friends whom like from school and from college will always be there as well. So I guess Malaysia will always be like a permanent home, whereas Sheffield was still a home, but it was more of like a temporary thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's similar for me as well. I think like exactly the same thing where I miss the familiarity with being in Malaysia, right? Like the way we do things. Even when I came back, like you said, right, the first year when I came back after being away from home for such a long time, I was excited to be in the queue. You know, like Malaysia, we have long queues. We always wait for a lot of things, right? I'm like, wow, having a queue is so refreshing, And like waiting in line, and people are just talking in Malay, talking in like Manglish, and everyone using a llama and all that, and like no one is trying to be proper, like. So yeah, it's very refreshing, and I think there's two questions that can be answered, right? Where's your home? In terms of where I consider my I mean, obviously my family is in Malaysia, so they will always be a place for me that I call home in Malaysia. But then outside of that, like same with what Melissa said, it's the friends around you, the people around you that make you feel like home. And that for me was in my Northfield. Our house during during my university time, it's called Northfield Road. And interesting thing about this Northfield Road is it's a completely terrible road. It's like there's a drug house, there's a house growing weed like every other place.
Wait,
right?
really?
And every now and then, yeah, that's terrible. Once you turn into that road, you can smell weed. And you can smell like people just walking around, like asking for change and all that, and like it's a really dodgy area. But I called that place home because like my friends were there, and we cooked amazing meals. We will make all sorts of like lamb shank, ratatouille, like lots of pasta together. We made sushi together, and it's just it's a good community. And even though it was like, I don't know, a terrible area, terrible environment. And my parents were like praying for me to leave that place as soon as possible. I just love that place, It's home, but it's a I mean, it's a terrible place, but it's home, you know. And once we left that area, like our friend group went to different areas. So now I'm in Birmingham, and they went back to Liverpool. Some of them went back to Coventry. I mean, they stayed in Coventry. So yeah, I guess like what Mel said, it's the people, you know, the friends that we made along the way that make it seem like home, right? Because we have known about our family. Our family's always been there for us the whole time, and we want to crave that same kind of family again when we're in the UK. Yeah, I really miss that.
I really like the fact that you guys brought about like friends and like because like most of the time you always think I think like there's just always this like very cliche quote, right? Like home is not really a place, it's like, you know, people, right? Or people that you feel very comfortable with. But I think it's very true. Like
Isn't that from Avengers?
I think I don't really
Stolen quote.
Yeah.
Like I think for me it was very different. Like because I didn't go to the UK, right? But I stayed on campus before COVID and everything, right? And I think like the people that I hang out with and the people that I have dinner with every day or studied with like late at night, and it just felt like like you would actually consider that place your home, right? Even like when I came back, like, you know, back home, to where I'm staying now, right? For like the weekend or, you know, for the holidays, and I always refer to that. I'm going back to my place. I'm going back home. Like, you know, it just sounded very it sounded very natural, and I think it's very true that, you know, it's about that there is a tie between like where your heart actually calls home, and like, you know, like where like the people actually make it feel like home for you, lah. And I think like what do you think is the differences like for being in Malaysia? Like, yeah, I think both of you studied in MCKL, right? So what's the difference like studying actually locally and like overseas?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like I'm not sure, because I feel like university maybe will be slightly different from college, and I think Tim, your experience will also be slightly different because you live like on campus, right? Compared to MCKL where we just go home every day. I feel like as international students who come to the UK, I think we have this sense of community where we know that we are all alone in this foreign country, and we know that we need to look out for your friends. So we kind of build this, like, as compared to in MCKL, we kind of build this like tighter bond where we know that we are the family in university in Sheffield. So it kind of gives a different vibe. I'm not sure about people in Malaysia who like live off campus. Maybe it gives the same vibe, or maybe it's slightly different because you know that your family is just like, you know, a few km away, or like in maybe in a different state. But I think there's this still like this sense of like difference when you're so far away from home, and you need to depend on your friends if you need anything. And I think one thing I realized also was that so basically I started my placement with like two other friends. One is an international student and another one is a local student. And what I realized was that I think there's this thing about international students where it's not really like anyone's fault or anything, but I think it's just how it is. Like the international student, like she offered like, oh, do you need help to move to London and all that? Whereas the home student, like the local British student, was more like slightly more detached, where like she didn't like, oh, like, do you need help? So I think it's sort of the mindset, because when you are studying or working in your home country, it's kind of like, okay, like I am my own self, I'm comfortable, I'm with my family and all that. But when you are international, I think you tend to like reach out to your friends more and like depend on each other more. Yeah, I don't know if like Sean agrees with that.
I think I had a different experience because Coventry University, the first few years we had a really strong Malaysian society. And then this is a common thing amongst all international students, right? There will always be one Malaysian society in every university, and I think Sheffield's one is very big. Sheffield and Warwick and like a few other big universities, very popular among Malaysians. But Coventry University, not that big. So we didn't really have a lot of that community where like, you know, that close band of international students that stick together. I definitely saw that in the first 1.5 years. But then as time went by, the group actually went smaller and smaller. And so we kind of actually had to disband it. I think in second year, I think. But then I found my family through. I mean, I found like my friends and family. I call them my family through just going, meeting them from church, and they're like a bunch of really really cool people that they're not Malaysian at all, but we just share the same values, and we share the same kinds of like morale. And yeah, I guess like even though they were local, like they were like home students, they were really like, I don't know, encouraging, and like they will help you move and all that kind of stuff, which was great. Yeah, actually, I wanna ask you, Melissa, we were talking about home and all that, right? Have you ever caught yourself when you're in Malaysia? Have you ever caught yourself saying, "I'm gonna go back home," and like with the intention of meaning Sheffield?
If I do that in front of my parents, I think they will like smack me. I don't think I've said that in
I
front
have
of my
done that
parents.
before.
Oh really? Oh, they must have been hurt.
So they were so hurt. They were like, "Wait, you what home?"
Oh no.
Oh my goodness.
I think I'm lucky. I've
Yeah.
never done that in front of my parents before, but I'm not sure if I've done it in front of my friends. I might have.
But you do feel it to a certain extent now, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
but actually, it's very interesting to see like how even like you go like this saying among local people, like local students, right? Like these international students, like these Malaysian students, like halfway across the world, right? Just to go back to Chinatown and like meet everybody from like from Malaysia, and
Yeah.
but it's actually very interesting to see how you guys like have that kind of like camaraderie and still like keep in touch with like Malaysian people lah.
Yeah, I guess that's what some people say also. Some people say like, I think that was me like back in Malaysia before I came to UK as well. Like the mindset is like, I'm not gonna travel all across halfway across the world just to go back to Malaysians and just to hang out with like only Malaysians again. Then like what's the point? Might as well you stay in Malaysia, right? So yeah, and I think that is what everyone's mindset is. But I think I guess that's also one thing that I kind of slightly regret about my first like 3 years in Sheffield, was that I wish that I like kind of explored more and like tried to find like more friends who are like non-Malaysian and be closer to them. Naturally, I think I do have other international friends who are non-Malaysians, but somehow naturally I would gravitate more towards Malaysians again, because like, for example, like the first time you meet, if it's Malaysians, like you don't have to like sort of like you don't have to like hide your Malaysian slang or your Malaysian accent. For example, you're more comfortable. You can, if they are from KL, you can say like, oh, which college do you go to, all that. But when it's like non-Malaysians, maybe like at the beginning you struggle to like find a topic to talk about. Maybe you talk about the weather for like the first 5 times you meet. Then like what happens to the 6th time? Like what do you say? So like I think there is the extra effort that you need to put in to like be closer to like non-Malaysian, but it's definitely worth it lah, because it's really very like different. And for example, like this year or last year, I started being closer to a lot of like Singaporean friends as well. And even though Malaysian and Singaporean is like it's very similar, but then I realized that we are actually quite different in certain ways, and it was very interesting to like see how kind of different Malaysian and Singaporeans are. So like when it comes to like other international students from like who are from completely different backgrounds and all that, it's really interesting to see how they look at life very differently as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the same.
Yeah, so I mean, at least there's a mix up.
Yeah, like the thing about Malaysian students going overseas and being like, oh, I'm gonna meet, like, I'm not gonna go halfway across the world to just meet more Malaysians. I think that's a very very common thing. I was in the queue at the airport, like going into the UK, and I was like talking to this girl. She was a first year law student at Warwick, and she was telling me like she had plans of like, I'm gonna meet all because I was talking to her about the Malaysian society there, and she was like, you know what, I'm not gonna join Malaysian society, and I want to meet a lot of locals and all. But like silently in the back of my mind, I can think to myself, you're not gonna escape Malaysian society. It's definitely gonna be there. It's gonna it's always gonna be there for you, because culturally I feel we are just more comfortable being with our people, like Kakilang. We want to have that like we want to have that the same amount of conversation that we know how to talk about it. We are more, I don't know, it just feels really familiar to us. And I guess if we do try to like mix around with other people, like do you do code switching, like where you try and replicate other people's accent? I do that all the time in the UK, and it's like it's such a hassle for me to like try and, especially if like there is locals there and there's also a Malaysian there, and then you are like,
then you're like, wait,
conversing,
what do I
and
say?
you're like, wait, what? Do I
Exactly.
switch to a Malaysian accent, or do I? Oh man, it's so hard. And just being Malaysian the whole time, like just speaking like this the whole time, is very, very like comforting.
Yeah, true.
I mean, it's really beautiful to see like all like both of you still like have that love for Malaysia, like, and still like hold on really close to your roots. And I think like that actually like segue into like the deeper question of today, which is like, do you still think about Malaysia while you're away? I mean, like recently, like a lot of things have been happening in Malaysia, right? And like, I actually caught up with Sean like a couple of days ago, and like actually it made me realize that there are Malaysians that actually do keep up with news, and there are those who don't lah. So I think like that's a question that I wanted to ask you guys.
No. I feel like I never keep up with you.
Same, guilty as well.
This doesn't just apply. This is not just for Malaysia stuff, right? Like I don't keep up with news in general. Like I'm pretty bad at like just staying on top of everything. Like even that time when there was like a lot of stuff happening in Gaza and all that kind of like Israel and Gaza and the stuff before that with like the BLM movement and all that kind of stuff, that was pretty long ago. But like I just didn't really like catch up and like keep in touch with all the news that was going on. I think I'm more of a person that just wants to shun out all of the negativity in my life and focus on what's positive. There's a lot of arguments to that. I think I was talking to Tim about this, and like being knowledgeable about what's happening is actually very important. But I believe in ignorance is bliss, right? But yeah, I think like what Tim is trying to bring forward and to talk about all these problems that are happening in Malaysia will we have to raise more awareness about the things that are going around. And yeah, I think it's a very important thing to keep in touch with the news. Something that I haven't been doing a lot. How about you, Mel?
Yeah, same as well. I'm also like really terrible. In general, I think since I was young, I never had the habit of like reading the newspaper or watching the news or whatever. So I'm in general really bad at this kind of stuff. I have two friends. One of them who is currently my flatmate in London. They both did a degree in politics. So naturally, it's their habit to like every morning. I think every morning they wake up, right? They check the news and they follow up on I don't know, like news from all over the world, or I don't know lah. So like it's kind of nice having like someone around to like keep me updated. Like sometimes like I'll be like cooking in the kitchen, and then my flatmate is Nick. He will say like, oh, do you know like what's happening in Malaysia? There's like this political instability, blah blah blah. So like he is one of my source of like news when I'm here. And also another source would probably be like social media, I think. But I mean, social media has its pros and cons as well, like whether it's biased or not. But I generally am quite bad in like keeping up to date with news and all that. I think one thing that I do try to keep myself updated with is like COVID progress. I think like the number of cases in Malaysia, in UK, and all that. That's what I try to do. But I guess I think your team's original question was like do you like think about Malaysia when you're in UK? I think naturally like I do, because like my family's still there and my friends as well. But like interestingly, I think like 2 days ago, like I called my sister after quite a long time. I think like usually I call my sister like almost every day, but like since I moved to London, it's been quite rare. So I called her like after a week, and like she was talking about how bleak things are in Malaysia because the lockdown is still going on, and it has been going on for the longest time. And I think from there, like I kind of realized that I kind of forgot what it's like being in lockdown in Malaysia, because it's very easy to like scroll social media, like see like, oh, people complaining about cases, people complaining about lockdown, about politics, but then I forgot that like it's actually quite mentally like stressful being in that situation in Malaysia itself, because in UK, like although our cases are like sometimes a lot worse than in Malaysia, but we're still going around. There's no lockdown anymore. So in my head, I'm like, okay, like yeah, like we are in UK, we're also living with COVID, like we got used to it. But then I forgot that people in Malaysia, like you can't even go out, you can't even dine in and all that. So I think that was like kind of like a moment for me. I realized like, oh, I completely forgot that it's quite like stressful being in Malaysia at the moment. So yeah, I do try to like keep myself updated lah, but whether it works or not is different story. Yeah.
Actually, talking about like scrolling social media, right? I actually like was like again like reflecting about it and thinking about it, and I realized that actually for us Malaysians is really not very much different, right? Like like when things were going on in other countries, right, and we didn't have lockdown, we were still able to dine out and go out and meet with friends. We didn't really bother to think about all those other stuff, and I think that's because like there's so much things happening around you, right? So maybe you have to meet up with your friends, or like you have work to do, or like you have study to catch up with, and there's a lot of things going on to the point that it's because I am not currently in this situation, right? Like, I do not need to really think about it because it doesn't really like directly affect me currently.
Mm.
And I think like that is something that is that I think maybe like it's something that what you guys have been experiencing now. What do you think, Sean?
Yeah, I feel like being away from everything and not being there physically really makes it easy for everyone to, like, for international students to kind of like discredit whatever they're going through. And like like Nessa said, we scroll social media and we see people like all complaining about this and that. But then that time when I was actually in Malaysia during the lockdown, that was actually very, very, I don't know, depressing.
Yeah.
Not to make it, it's not a joke or anything, but like seriously, that was actually, and I didn't go through that for a long time. Now they've been going through that for the longest time. I left, and they're still going through it. I'm actually very proud of Malaysians that they're still enduring this whole situation and being positive in the sense where like I've seen recently, like Tim shared with me, like they have been like showing they're turning COVID cases into a joke, right? They're like trying to be, I don't know, they're like trying to throw some fun in the air so that everyone is still being happy about it and not being depressed about it. If everyone was like all the, like life is terrible, life is bleak, and it's not going to get better, then in general everyone will be very, very depressed, right? And I'm actually I feel like with everything that's happening now, the chances of people like the more people talk about stuff and be more vocal about what we're going through, then maybe we can encourage other people to take better actions. I know a lot of people are really how would I put this plainly? A lot of people are questioning the actions that the government are doing right now, and it's yeah. I think through podcasts like this, we will be able to spark something out and talk more about the current state of Malaysia.
I think like you guys like answered because like I was going to ask like do you think it's necessary, but like I think it sounds like for you guys it is necessary lah. But I think like just to hear from you lah, like do you actually like get your news from friends outside of Malaysia?
Outside
Like
of
news
Malaysia,
about
you mean, like-
Malaysia?
Yeah, news about Malaysia because I think like Mel, you were sharing like you get it from like your housemates, but your housemates are like with you lah, right? Like it's a daily conversation lah. But how much do you hear of it like from like maybe people back home, like other than your family lah?
Not a lot actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same. I guess apart from social media, I guess it depends on whether like you actually take the time out to like maybe like FaceTime your friends back in Malaysia and all that. But generally, if we don't like take the initiative to ask like, oh, how are you? How are things back home? Then I think it's very difficult to like actually understand how things are back home. And I think most of us get our updates through social media. And the thing about social media is it's also not a very neutral source of like news, right? I mean, there's possibly like another whole topic on its own about social media, but yeah, I guess through what people say online and stuff, you can kind of see what's going on in Malaysia. But again, that's only from your circle of friends who may have the same like opinion. So it's not like a general opinion of like Malaysians in general back home. Yeah.
Yeah, you can really get down to like into a rabbit hole following one side of the story or like following one view of the story because we only have like so many stories. I mean, so many friends that we check out on or like view that story, right? Like maybe if we see 10 stories talking about the same thing, we would assume that's the general trend, right? But it could actually be a completely different story behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Right.
And
yeah. I feel like in for my case, right, not many people talk about Malaysia just because it's kind of a taboo to talk about politics. I feel like when you start talking about politics, then the whole mood or the whole environment starts to like, gets a bit like everyone's a bit uneasy. Everyone's a bit like, oh, you can't say that, you can't talk about that, or and people generally want to have fun, right? Especially when you meet up and you want to talk about stuff. You don't want to dull the mood with like talking about politics. So I guess that for that reason, like we don't really talk. My circle of friends don't really talk about Malaysia. Other than Tim.
I talking about that, I remember that there was this like again like someone was like feeling very like he was very overwhelmed with a lot of things, right? And I brought this up, and then Sean was like, why are you doing this, right? Like normally I'll feel like very excited to talk about it, but like today it just feels like everything is very down. And I think like generally like that's like the consensus for us in Malaysia. And it's gotten to a point that we don't even want to talk about COVID numbers unless like the numbers like go up by like 1,000 or 2,000, and then like we'll be like, oh shit. But unless it's like maintaining in the same like range or like drops like by 1,000, it's like there's no difference lah, And I think like for us we have gotten very very desensitized to it lah. And I think it's something that like when we bring up to like our friends overseas, it may come off like as such a mood killer. Like I'm taking out my time out of my day, right? So to work around like the time zone, and the first thing you tell me is life is shit. And
yeah, that's true. And to add on to what Sean said about social media just now also, I think it like naturally we will follow people who like have kind of sort of like the same mindset as us. And the thing is like social media itself, like for example, like Facebook, they pick it up, and their algorithm also will suggest you more things that you already believe, so it sort of makes you even more like one-sided. So that doesn't help. And also like yeah, like what Tim said, like I think also the thing about politics is that not a lot of people are very interested in it. Maybe more people are now, but like what I said just now, like my two friends who studied politics, like they always have a lot to talk to each other about, because they know that both of them are interested about politics, about like the political situation in Malaysia, and they know that they can talk to each other about it, whereas not a lot of like other people maybe would want to listen. So yeah, I guess it's also about like knowing who to talk to about it, but then at the same time, politics is kind of relevant to everyone, and it affects everyone's lives. So I think um building like political awareness, especially among the younger generation, would also like, it would be a good thing lah. And I think since we are on the topic of like, the political instability in Malaysia, I think most of us at this point in our lives are probably thinking about like our career and all that. So like I wanted to hear from you guys, like what do you think, especially for Sean, like since you are starting to work in UK, do you ever think like, oh, maybe I want to work in the UK because Malaysia is so unstable? And like for Tim, like have you considered, like since you study in Malaysia, have you considered like, working overseas, or was Malaysia always like your mindset from the beginning?
For me,
If
you give me the choice, if you ask me right now and like, put me on the spot and ask me right now, do I want to stay in the UK or work in Malaysia? I would totally say I want to stay in the UK. Okay, and it comes from selfish reasons, right? Obviously, the biggest factor would be financially. It's a lot more lucrative to stay here, and I feel like just the work atmosphere in UK. I mean, like I can't say for my new job that I'm going to start in September, but like they have like laws in place that say you can't work, over this amount of time, X amount of time, or like stuff like better working conditions. They don't have like such a cutthroat environment where everyone's trying to try and beat you here and there. I feel like it's just the culture is different here in the UK, whereas like back in Malaysia, I feel like even though we pride ourselves in like diversity and we don't want to engage in racism and all that, there's still that underlying sense of like, oh, if you are if you are Chinese or if you're Malay, if you're Indian, then you get certain perks or benefits, right? Or you get you don't get those perks. So I feel like in the UK, everything is more how do I put it? It's more organized in a way where these kind of things can't really happen as often, and that's a great benefit to myself. But it means like there'll be more problems that will be happening in Malaysia, where there's not enough. There's like brain drain, like Tim was talking about. It comes with selfish reasons, but I would say I'll stay in the UK.
Would you say like long term or just like currently?
Wow. Okay, that's a whole different question.
Or this is like this is like too much to think about. Like I'm just going to think about the next 5 years.
I feel like I want to think about the next. Yeah, just the next 5 years.
Just the next 5 years. How about like okay, this is like probably a lot further in the future, but like if like you think about like family and your children upbringing, do you prefer like Malaysia or UK?
I feel like I'm not sure about not sure about you, Mel, but when we were growing up in our household, I feel like my parents have always educated us to the point where the whole idea for studying hard and studying overseas is so that we can migrate overseas and not be hindered by the lack of opportunity in Malaysia. That has always been my upbringing. So the whole idea is like I study hard, get to a good college, get to a good university, and stay in that country, so that maybe in the future, like my parents can come over here as well. So with that kind of mindset, I think probably starting a family in the UK where there's so much more opportunity for my children. I don't think Malaysia can offer that kind of those kinds of benefits. And I feel like it's very biased because different families will educate you different ways. But that was my upbringing. What do you think?
I think okay, in terms of the like what you mentioned about like racism and all that also, I think I have like a slightly different approach from that, because I feel like, okay, I mean there is like racism in Malaysia obviously, but then I feel like in the UK it's somehow like a bit like worse, because it's like, okay, you walk on the streets and people know that you're not from here. It's very obvious that we look different from everyone else. And I think when like COVID happened and all that also, like I think previously I wasn't very concerned about racism and whatnot. But then when COVID happened, I think there were a lot more cases of like people being racist against Asians. And I started becoming a bit more like paranoid because it was happening in Sheffield and all that, and in roads that I'm familiar with. But in London, I think it's a bit different because I feel a bit more comfortable because London is a lot more diverse. So I feel like maybe it's slightly less racism in London. And before coming to London, I also like traveled to a bit of like a remote area in UK. It's Dorset. I'm not sure if you guys heard of it, but like it's a very nice place. It's a place where people retire. It's like a tourist spot, but for some reason there isn't a lot of like Asians there. And I noticed that when I was there, because they are used to having like locals there. When I was there, I think a lot of people like kind of thought like maybe we are from China, maybe we don't understand English. So I can tell that like when I communicate with people there, they are worried that I don't understand what they're talking about. Or like when they don't know that like we speak English in Malaysia. So I feel like one of the reasons why, I mean, for now I would say UK also, but one of the reasons why I wouldn't stay in the UK would probably because I will feel like I will always feel like an outsider. Whereas in Malaysia, I mean, of course there's racism and all that, but it's always home, and there are a lot more like Chinese people in Malaysia, and people that are more used to it compared to in the UK. I mean, we have had a lot of awareness about racism throughout the past 2 years, I think, but at the same time, I feel like racism will always be there in the UK, especially when COVID started. And for me personally, like I want to do, so I'm doing biomed, so I want to do research and hopefully lecturing. And like what Sean said about like the culture here as well, I actually prefer the learning culture in the UK more, because I feel like they prioritize more about the learning experience and the well-being of the students rather than the results. Whereas in Malaysia or maybe in Singapore or in maybe like other Asian countries, it's more of like results driven. Here they care about, here there's an option to, especially during COVID, and we realized it during COVID, it's like there's an option to submit extenuating circumstances if you can't attend an exam. For example, if like your grandmother passed away, or if you're having mental issues, you were sick during the exam period. It's very easy because in the UK, like people prioritize well-being a lot. Whereas in Malaysia, right, I'm pretty sure if you say like my grandmother passed away, they will ask, where's your grandmother's death certificate? Then only they will let you postpone the exam. Whereas in the UK, right, I said my grandmother passed away, and then they're like, okay, take the exam in the next sitting. So it's kind of like a different approach in education in the UK that I prefer, which is why I would say UK now. But yeah, how about you, Tim? Like for someone who like studies psychology, especially like psychology, I think is also quite difficult because psychology, I guess the awareness is not that great in Malaysia yet compared to like UK or US. So yeah.
I think like because we are all from the city, right? I think like psychology is like people do have awareness about about mental health and well-being as a whole, lah, right? I mean, in this like KL and Selangor, I think further than that, like I don't think it's really that prioritized, right? It's a very Asian culture, and I think like I mean, this can be a topic on its own also, but it's a very Asian culture where if the problem is not seen, it is not a problem, right? And we don't want to talk about it. And I think like so it's not really about awareness, but more about the job opportunity. Because in Malaysia, like to further your studies into take up your masters or even a PhD and stuff like that, right? All of that actually like there are very limited resources, and a lot of those limited resources are in public universities, right? And they are still like it's not as easy to enter. But for me, I think I'm very different from Sean, because like Sean brought about like idea about spending so much money to educate you and to give you a better future, so that you can pull yourself out of that hole and like don't like make a better future for yourself. And I don't think that's wrong. But for me, like my upbringing was very different, where I'm very grateful to be in Malaysia. I mean that mindset, lah, right? Like we don't have like we don't have like all these earthquakes and stuff like that, right? Like there's no tsunami. You don't hear the alarm ringing, and like, you got to hide inside the house, and like or like you have like a pretty good amount of rain that we don't feel scared. I think Sean was telling me like previously, like he was in the UK and like there was this drizzle, right? And then like there was like this announcement on the radio where they were like, you better hide in the house and you better not go out. And Sean was like, this is just like very normal in Malaysia. And yeah, all this stuff, like I think is one of those things that make like we take for granted, because it's something that that we don't really like physically see, lah, right? And so for me, I have never really had like the tendency to say, I want to get out of here. I want to get out of Malaysia. To be very honest, I think recently in like the past few months, that sort of thought has come to mind. Like, if you're going down this path, right, how long more can we hold on? Right? Because like people even in like like the middle class, they are falling into like the bottom, and like all this there is a big there's a lot of like political, economical instability, and I think that made me very concerned about my future. For the first time in my life, I sort of like thought it's the only way out of this rabbit hole, like to move out. But I think I'm also like torn by the idea of, if not our generation, then which generation? Right? If not like us trying to better Malaysia, like Mel was talking about, like how the way they look at education, or like the working conditions, and kind of like outline and the structure of the government or the country. Like if we don't try to fix that, right, and we all run away, and then like what's going to be left the country, lah, right? I think that's like something that has I would say it's a burden in my heart, lah, right? Like it's not our generation, then which generation, lor.
Yeah, I get what you mean. I also I attended this online event recently about like studying in the UK versus studying in Malaysia, and that was like from the bioscience point of view. And then it was just like a normal webinar, and then someone from the audience asked this professor, this doctor, I think. So this doctor, she basically had a very bright future in the UK in terms of research, but she chose to do it. But she chose to further her career in Malaysia anyway, even though it was more difficult, and even though the future for her in UK was very bright. And someone in the audience asked, like, what are the benefits of me going back to Malaysia? Like I think the question was like why can't Malaysia make it more appealing for me to go back? Because since like future is brighter for me in the UK. And what the speaker answered, which like really like it was like a whoa moment for me. She said that like it's no one's responsibility to make you more attracted to work in Malaysia. Like everyone has their own problems. Why would they? Why what like? It's none of their business, you know. Like no one is free enough to like make it more attractive for Malaysians studying overseas to come back to Malaysia. Like for you to want to do that, you have to do it by yourself. You can't wait here and expect people to make it more attractive for you to want to go back, which is like it's true lah, you know. And I think to have like that mindset and like Tim's mindset as well, it has to come from a point of like it's a very selfless point of view where you're thinking about your country rather than yourself. And I think for us, especially like maybe our generation, I think it's a larger majority of us would be thinking for ourselves rather than for our country first, because like none of us I feel are like very patriotic in any way. But I feel like sometimes I do have that thought as well, like, you know, I'm doing bioscience, I should be contributing to my country, I should be like making like research happen in Malaysia, because if I don't do it, then who's gonna do it, you know? Then it's just gonna become worse and worse in the future. But I think for me personally, like I would probably try to work in the UK first and make a living for myself until maybe I'm more financially stable. Then maybe I can try to take my expertise, or hopefully I have expertise by then, and bring it back to Malaysia and like contribute to the country and contribute to the younger generations back then. So I think like for me, and I believe for like most of the other people, they will prioritize themselves and their future first. But hopefully people still come back and like to Malaysia lah. Cause if not, like Malaysia will stay this way forever, you know, like if people don't come back and like contribute. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I feel like it's very easy though to say that I would stay in the UK and then like accumulate as much knowledge as I can and then go back to Malaysia. It's the same. Okay, like not to say that I'm not like being against you in any way, Melissa. But I'm saying like it's similar to saying like I will first become rich and then I'll give to the poor kind of thing. I feel like it's very easy for when you're rich to just stay rich, right? Because if you give away your money, then you're kind of like
yeah,
you will be poor yourself, right? I feel like
yeah.
And I guess like being like prioritizing your okay, wait, no, actually I wanted to talk about that thing you were saying about that professor that gave up her opportunity in UK. Because my brother was actually telling me this. So he recently just graduated from Penang Medical College, and he was talking about how they're like really really big and you know, prestigious doctors that would have graduated from like John Hopkins or whatever, and then they would quit their job and go to like some government hospital in Penang to work there on like a minimum like the you know, standard government pay for a doctor, and like they'll be like a surgeon, and they'll be doing like crazy amounts of hours every week, being on call and giving up all that pay that they could have, just because they feel like it's a more fulfilling job to them. And like I was also pretty shocked, you know, by that. Like people would give up, like, because like as for doctors, they always get the choice of like going into private or government, right? Government hospital. And my brother was pretty convinced that he will want to work in a government hospital at that time when I was talking to him. But then obviously when my mom and dad heard about this, they were like, "What? This is no way a doctor should be." It's like, there's no way you work in a government hospital. You have to like, you have long hours. You can't even see your family, and then you have like tons of things to do. I guess a lot of the part has to be. I mean, for me especially, I'd say my family has a big influence in my choice, and not that they would force me, but I will want to be there to provide for them. Especially if they're, you know, like now at our age, they're getting older, and it will be harder for them to like support themselves as well. So I would want to to be financially stable to the point where I can provide for them and myself. And the UK is a great place that offers that, I would say. Like, I don't think you can find a job that pays equally as well in Malaysia to support your family. And I guess that goes a long way in even like for your own family, right? Like when you start a family in Malaysia, if you are a fresh graduate that like earns 3,000 a month, it's becoming harder and harder to buy a house. Like back then, during my parents' time, our parents' time, they could easily purchase a house for like 100,000, 200,000. Now it's crazy expensive to get any kind of property, and it's becoming harder to stay in Malaysia, I feel. And our pay is not rising that rapidly, but everything, the inflation is just a lot higher.
Yeah, that's true. Like I think like what you say just now also, like it's true that like it's also difficult to, back to like the earlier topic. I think it's also very difficult to say that, you build a career back in the UK and then you move to Malaysia, because at that point you would have already settled in the UK. Maybe you have family, maybe you have children going to school. So it's very easy for us to say now, as well as like young people with no responsibilities, that you can say like, oh, I can go UK then move to Malaysia. Like, but then it's also like a lot more things to think about when we are a lot older as well, especially when we have family. And I think like what you said like about your brother, I think, who like work in like government hospital. I think okay, maybe some people like, maybe for some people being financially stable is not their first priority. Maybe they were brought up that way. But I also feel like to a certain extent, like it comes from a position of privilege to be able to make the choice to like choose a job that pays less, because maybe you're not very like financially dependent. Maybe you are comfortable with the money that that comes from your family or from heritage and all that. Then maybe they can make the comfortable choice to like, okay, I'll go for this lower paying job because like I don't need a lot of money because it's more fulfilling and all that. But I guess for some people, like if they were brought up like in a less fortunate condition, I think it would be natural for like being financially stable to be like their first priority as well. If they're presented with the opportunity of making more money, of course they will take it, because maybe throughout their life they never had that opportunity. And I think for me, like this is always like a thought in my mind, because I always think that my parents like paid money for me to study overseas, and I will feel really, really bad if I don't give the same opportunity to my children in the future as well. I always think about that. I don't know why. So that's just a thought lah.
I think I'm talking about that like privilege, right? Like like I just sidetrack a bit. Like that privilege is actually comes from, a lot of people always look at privilege as a very bad thing, but I don't think privilege is a bad thing, because somebody actually had to sacrifice for the privilege that we have, right? Like like our parents had to work really, really hard to send us to uni, and some of them maybe didn't even have the opportunity to graduate with a degree, right? And like I think like it comes even to a point where they like, because of inaccessibility of like public universities, they work even harder to actually afford us to go to private universities. I think that kind of privilege is not in a sense like it doesn't fall from like it doesn't fall from the sky, right? Somebody has to work for it, and to keep up that kind of opportunity that we have for our children. I think it's something that we really have to consider lah.
Yeah, that's true. I think that like the topic about privilege is like probably like can be another episode on its own, like, because like I think some people will say like, oh, you are well to do because you are hardworking and all that. But for some people, like it can, like, I think luck really plays a big role as well. Like some people are born into different situations that helps them become more successful or not. So that's probably another topic lah.
Yeah. But actually,
I think
I just wanna like go back a little bit. Like I feel like when we talk about opportunities and like especially for international students, right? We are given this choice, this opportunity to go overseas and like study and all that kind of stuff. I always feel that guilt if I take all of that knowledge and then like this is more for my own family. I feel like if I study and then I come back to Malaysia and I don't do as I kind of like waste the opportunity in some sense. I always play in my mind where if I go overseas and take all of this like many years of education and I come back to Malaysia, it kind of feels like I'm back to square one, right? Whereas if I stay in the UK, it's kind of like I'm branching out to more opportunities. I don't know. What do you think about that, Tim?
I think it also comes back to, because I again like this very strong concept about like more than ourselves, it will only drive us then to think about the country. Because if like all we think about is like like how many steps we are, right? How many how much we're progressing, then I think like definitely going overseas will allow us to progress even further. Like, there are much more job opportunities. There are much more don't even talk about job opportunities, but like for me, like in mental health, like sector, like there is so much more studies done overseas. There's so much more like things you can do and things you are allowed to do, right? Can compare to Malaysia. I think like, and in that case, if we keep on thinking like that, right? And then Malaysia is going to be like stuck. You're going to be like in the stone. I mean, like every other Malaysian who never had the opportunity to go overseas or like work overseas will be stuck in like in a very a very slow paced movement, right? I think like bringing that back, possibility of our families in the future moving forward could also be there. It doesn't mean that just because we come back, it doesn't move at all. I think it does move to a certain extent, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I think like I guess like to wrap like kind of like to like wrap up this like situation where we have where it's like Malaysia is like it's home but like it's unstable, or like UK like it's stable but it's not home, that kind of thing. I think like I kind of have a very short story about like this, like many years ago. I don't even know how I remember it because it was so long ago, but like I went out with my mom and my sister to like an education fair because my sister, I don't know whether it was my sister or it was me, I can't remember. Like either I think my sister just finished high school and she was thinking about like going to college and all that, or to university. So like they always have like those education fair in KLCC, and then there'll be a lot of people. And then we were thinking about furthering studies and all that. And then we were just eating in this like small like Penang shop, I don't know what lah. And then it was very crowded because it was the whole KLCC convention, and we were sitting next to this Chinese dude with like his daughter, right? And he just casually like strike a conversation with my mom, and he said like he told my mom, he was like, you should send your kids to Singapore because Singapore is so much better as a country. Their political situation is so much better. Malaysia is just going downhill all the way. And there's one thing that my mom said that I really remember until now, because it was like another of my mind blown moment. She said like it's true that Singapore is doing a lot better as a country, but they are doing very well because they are very dependent on a very good government. And Singapore is sort of like, they are lucky because they have had a good government for many years since the beginning, and that's why they're doing so well. But if let's say this one general election where the people make the wrong choice and it's a bad government, the whole country will basically collapse, because it's a bad government and it's a small country. Compared to in Malaysia, we have had terrible government since the very beginning. I mean, we had problems since the very beginning, but we are still surviving, So that's what she said. She said basically like, we know that as Malaysians, we are not 100% dependent on our government to do well. Yeah. So that's one thing that I always remember. Like, we can survive with a bad government. Maybe it's going downhill or maybe it's going uphill. Like we don't know, but we have been surviving so far, so maybe we will survive again in the future. Yeah.
That's what I love about Malaysia. I feel like Malaysia is just very resilient. In like
Yeah. That's the word. Yeah, resilient.
we can endure through a lot of shit and still come out strong.
Yeah.
And like
Exactly.
that really it's really shown, you know, especially over here, like in UK. Like I've known this Malaysian store in Coventry that has been around for a long time, even through COVID, even through like all the stuff that's happening. I was talking to him, the owner, the other day, and he was saying that like COVID is nothing compared to what he has you know, been through with like the stock market crisis in like 2008 and like a lot of stuff happening in the economy, and like it's nothing compared to like, you know, what they've been through. So like Malaysians, man, we have the blood of resiliency.
Yeah, that's true.
Resilience. I really like the word though, resilience, because like actually talking about like all of the things that have been happening in Malaysia, right? Like we have picked up the slack in a sense, right? Like if the government like didn't fulfill our needs, we actually pick up the slack. Like, you know, campaigns like the, you know, like the Bendera Putih campaigns, where people start like giving out food and people start like, you know, like making sure that at least people who are struggling to even put like, you know, to even meet their basic needs, those needs are being met, not by government or like by any like, you know, party, but more about like from our own selves, like, you know, like and like, you know, the hashtag that goes around, like, you know, kita jaga kita, kaki ko kaki, that kind of thing. And I think that's really beautiful, right?
That's true. Yeah, we just survive. Yeah, the community.
Yeah, I think like to wrap this up, like, do you guys have any like, you know, any like takeaway points?
Wait, this one need to think.
I think I can go first. Like something that I recently saw online, right, and it really spoke to me was like this guy, like he came up with like this a couple of panels of comics, and it was like, Malaysia, we need to talk, and he asked a very important question. Like, you know, what does it mean to be Malaysian? Right? And like, you know, most of the things that we answer the first time around is like, oh, the food, like, you know, like at the beginning when I was saying like the food, like that's what makes it Malaysian, like with better food than Singapore. And like or either we say like, oh, we are a multiracial country, but the fact is like, you know, other countries are starting to become multiracial. Like even you can see in the Olympics, like Western Caucasian countries are sending like Chinese people, and it's like Chinese people fighting Chinese people, like, and like
all immigrants.
Or like, you know, look at Singapore. Singapore also has like, you know, Singapore is also like Malaysia, like, you know, we have like, there's like, Chinese, Malay, Indian. Like what really makes us Malaysian, and I think like that's something that really sticks at the top of my head, right? And I really like what Sean and Mel said, like resilience makes us Malaysian. Like looking out for each other, whether we are here locally or whether we are like halfway around the world.
Yeah, I think like echoing that, I guess I think no matter what, like we talk maybe in terms of career, maybe we prefer other countries in terms of like having a family and all that. Maybe, you know, situations in other countries will be better, but at least like after all that, I think, you know, like you cannot escape from like being Malaysian. Like you'll always be Malaysian, and that like you relate more to it when you're not in Malaysia, because you really see like what we have as Malaysians are. And I guess like Malaysia will always be home. I think that's the main takeaway message for me, like for this episode. Yeah.
I feel like there are a lot of things in Malaysia, just the community in Malaysia, that I really miss. one of the things I remember, it was actually not very long ago. It was during the lockdown. My mom told me to buy nasi lemak in Taman Desa, and I took my car, drove there, realized I only brought my credit card, and I don't have I don't have any cash whatsoever. You want to buy nasi lemak? How can you pay with card? I I'm so dumb. I actually go and ask the Encik, can you use card? He's like, look at me, what? And then and I basically told him I don't have any cash and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, don't worry about it. Even during the whole lockdown situation where he's earning I don't know how much he's earning or how many people go to the store a day, but he didn't mind. I ordered 5 packets of nasi lemak with fried chicken and add some kuah. Hey, he if I chow, right, and if I run away, he will lose so much money. I think he will lose more than 50 or 60 ringgit. But he didn't mind just letting me go. It's like, don't worry, man. We help each other, and we are in this together. We help each other, and that's the kind of attitude that I would say I can't do this in UK. if I'm 20p short, right, they'll ask me to leave the store.
That's
Right.
true.
I can't leave without paying extra with some tips maybe. Yeah, so I think that's the thing that truly resonates with me in Malaysia. And because of this kind of community, I feel like it's worth fighting for. No matter how much financial stability you can get from the UK, and you yes, you may be able to get more pay, or yes, you may be able to have more opportunities, but then this is the kind of heritage that we want to leave behind, and legacy that we want to uphold, and just throwing all that away and leaving Malaysia behind for an extra buck or two, that's not Malaysian. I feel like we have to. Our generation should keep this heritage going, and in the future, we can tell our kids, this is the kind of legacy that we have.
I like how Sean is starting to think about kids even before he started working. But yeah, I think
Long-term planner.
yeah, I think that wraps up today's episode, and thank you for watching. And yeah, if you like how we run this podcast, just comment in the comment section down below, and that was what we should talk about in the next episode. So yeah.
Bye.